ICE agents of being Nazi, Gestapo, and white supremacists when they are enforcing
Is that what I said?
You just insinuated that they're apparently recruiting others. You said they're recruiting others, and then it's a dog whistle for others to then apply to that.
Absolutely.
Second of all,
let me tell you what he's referring to.
You didn't see that?
He's referring to posts that have been put out on social media by DHS.
I've seen all the posts.
And on the Department of Labor and on other accounts that have been traced back to white supremacist chat rooms.
In today's video, Charles Blow and Abby Phillip shut down Brianna Lyman on Newsnight with Abby Phillip as a heated CNN debate erupts over the Insurrection Act, immigration enforcement, and the dangerous push to militarize domestic law enforcement. As Brianna Lyman leans into familiar MAGA defenses, Charles Blow and Abby Phillip press her with history, legal reality, and the real consequences of federal overreach. So let's dive in and watch how Charles Blow and Abby Phillip shut down Brianna Lyman on Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
Tonight, but I do want to start with this idea of the Insurrection Act and whether this is the moment that the Trump administration has been waiting for. Scott, you have been convinced that this is the time.
Yeah, they'd be well within their rights to do it. I mean, you've got a governor of Minnesota who has said out loud that he believes they exist in a state of occupation of the federal government. You've got people going off to trainings, training how to fight federal agents. You've got massive amounts of money flowing into these groups to fund this stuff. And you have a bunch of elected officials in Minnesota who seem to believe that federal laws do not apply there. And you have massive unrest and massive disorder in the streets. And just last night, a ICE agent was trying to arrest a Venezuelan national, and two other Venezuelan nationals, all illegal immigrants, came out and tried to beat him to death with a shovel, which has apparently enraged everyone in Minnesota. They have a lot of problems there, and if Trump decided to do it, I think he'd be well within his rights to do so.
Well, Scott's right that Donald Trump does have very broad discretion to invoke the Insurrection Act. If he does that, he will certainly be challenged in court, and I think he'll probably prevail because of how broad the law is. But let's also step back and get a little historical perspective here. If Donald Trump invokes the Insurrection Act over this, it will be the weakest invocation of the Insurrection Act in U.S. history. And let's just go through the recent history. The last time it was invoked, 92 L.A. riots, 63 people dead, $1 billion worth of damage. Anyone who was, most of us, maybe not you, but we're alive and remember that. And this is nothing compared to the L.A. riots. Before that was the late 50s, early 60s, desegregation, when certain towns and states in the South were defying Brown versus Board of Education, the Supreme Court for years, and Eisenhower, JFK, and LBJ all invoked the Insurrection Act to make sure that black students could get into public schools. This does not even begin to compare to that. So can he do it legally? I think he probably can. Is it a sound use of the Insurrection Act? I think it's historically completely out of step with the way we've seen it used by prior presidents.
The problem with Trump is that he doubles down on mistakes. So do I think he might invoke the Insurrection Act? Absolutely, because he's losing here politically. And he's feeling embarrassed, and he's got to find a way out. And I don't know that there is a way out unless the grown-ups, the Democrats that run Minnesota and Minneapolis, come to him and say, okay, here's a deal, Mr. President. We'll make it look like you have a win. Just like, our friend from Venezuela had to give her Peace Prize to him today. He needs something to show that he won. And I'm hoping that they could come to some sort of.
This shows why power is different from responsibility in democracy. History matters when leaders casually reach for extreme tools. The Insurrection Act was designed for national collapse, not political theater. Deploying troops domestically often escalates tensions rather than restoring order. Research consistently shows militarized responses intensify unrest and public mistrust. What is happening in Minnesota does not resemble historical precedents. The LA riots involved mass casualties and billions in damage. Civil rights deployments followed open defiance of Supreme Court rulings. Those conditions are absent here by any objective measure. Legal authority alone never determines whether action is wise. Broad discretion exists, but restraint has always defined credible leadership. Politically, the move looks like distraction during declining approval numbers. Recent polling shows aggressive immigration crackdowns losing independent voters. Most Americans prefer targeted enforcement over sweeping spectacle. Government data confirms most undocumented residents lack violent records. That undermines claims of emergency requiring military intervention. Law enforcement professionals warn soldiers complicate civilian policing operations. Posse comitatus norms exist because blurred roles invite abuse. Conservative legal scholars have echoed those warnings publicly. Once emergency powers are normalized, thresholds drop dangerously. Future presidents exploit chaos instead of solving underlying problems. Federalism allows disagreement without branding dissent rebellion. States challenging policy are not insurrectionist by default. Political embarrassment often drives reckless overcorrections. History shows escalation radicalizes opposition movements. De-escalation and cooperation reduce violence more effectively. Public safety depends on trust, not intimidation. Ellie Honig and Chris Hahn stress long-term consequences. Facts show spectacle benefits authoritarians, not communities. That is why restraint remains the strongest argument, especially when democracy relies on legitimacy, institutions, accountability, and restraint to survive polarized moments without fear, manipulation, or force.
And also as part of his kind of makeup, he believes that the only way to deal with dissent is to crush it.
Right.
That is not only horrible politics, it is un-American, and it is likely to fail. This is, and they've been building up to this idea that they will create the crisis and then they will solve the crisis by cracking down even harder than the forces that they used to create the crisis. They're asking ICE to do outrageous things. They are recruiting them using Nazi, white supremacist propaganda, hinting to that. And then people see that. People who don't recognize it as Nazi or white supremacists, maybe they just join anyway. But the ones who do recognize it see it as a hint, the same kind of hint as stand back and stand by. And then you put those people in the field. This is not people coming to Washington to protest. These are people being placed in my neighborhood doing horrible things to my neighbors. And when people respond to that, they say, now the problem we created, we will solve with more force. This is a horrible.
How dare you sit here and accuse ICE agents of being Nazi, Gestapo, and white supremacists when they are enforcing law?
Is that what I said?
You just insinuated that they're apparently recruiting others. You said they're recruiting others, and then it's a dog whistle for others to then apply to that.
Absolutely.
Second of all,
let me tell you what he's referring to.
You didn't see that?
He's referring to posts that have been put out on social media by DHS.
I've seen all the posts.
And on the Department of Labor and on other accounts that have been traced back to white supremacist chat rooms, iconography.
Wait. So that's like equivalent if Hitler drank water. So if you drink water, you're Hitler.
Did you not see the one?
Well, look,
did you not see the one with George Washington?
There's plenty of stuff.
Did you see the one with George Washington?
Which specific one?
The one where they were using Nazi. It's hinting at Nazi phrasing over a picture of George Washington. Did you see it? Did you see it? You didn't see it.
Well, what was the Nazi phrasing?
You said you see it, but you didn't see it.
What is the phrase?
What is the phrase?
What's the phrase?
And the reason
no one knows the phrase. How can you accuse her of singing it?
You can't say the phrase.
I don't want to, guys, hold on.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Everybody stop talking. Just a second. I don't want to go down this cul-de-sac. All I was saying, just in response to your question, is that he wasn't saying ICE agents are Nazis or whatever it is. People have linked back to very specific places where white supremacist ideology is utilized. You can disagree with that, but that is what he's talking about.
Okay.
That's all I wanted to
Now
say.
to the crisis on hand. Democrats created...
Crisis of his own making.
Just can you let it
Really?
finish?
Because I think it was
Just go ahead,
Joe
Brianna.
Biden who opened the border for 4 years and let in not only illegal aliens, but otherwise inadmissible aliens. And what did you think was going to happen when you let in millions of illegal aliens? It means that ICE must then carry out mass deportations because guess what? There are laws in the book.
This highlights a deeper issue about power and fear in modern politics. History shows that governments framing dissent as a security threat often manufacture justification for harsher force. Academic studies on protest policing consistently find militarized responses escalate violence rather than reduce it. After 2020, cities that relied on heavy federal-style enforcement saw longer unrest than those using de-escalation. That context matters when federal agencies expand aggressive tactics inside residential communities. Immigration enforcement under previous administrations targeted specific criminal networks, not broad neighborhood sweeps. Data from DHS confirms most undocumented immigrants have no violent criminal record. When enforcement shifts from precision to spectacle, innocent families absorb the harm. The concern about extremist symbolism is not imaginary. Researchers at the Anti-Defamation League have documented repeated use of coded imagery by far-right groups to signal ideology while maintaining plausible deniability. These dog whistles function precisely because supporters recognize them and critics are told they are overreacting. That pattern is well established. Accountability also matters. The law allows enforcement, but it does not require cruelty. Obama-era deportations relied heavily on workplace audits and judicial processes, not street confrontations designed for intimidation. Public trust erodes when officers appear untethered from local oversight. Polling already shows immigration approval dropping as tactics harden, not improving. That suggests voters are reacting to methods, not rejecting the rule of law. Crushing dissent has never produced stability in democracies. It produces backlash, radicalization, and long-term damage to legitimacy. Charles Blow and Abby Phillip are pointing to that risk. You cannot claim order while sowing chaos. Effective governance reduces tension, respects rights, and enforces laws without turning neighbors into enemies. History, evidence, and ethics all warn against repeating failures.
Now the question then becomes, do you care about enforcing laws on the books, or do you think it's okay to just ignore certain laws?
Of course,
To that point,
we want to enforce laws on
Right,
the
so
book.
that's what ICE is doing.
Obama enforced the immigration laws. He deported millions of people. He wasn't shooting people in the street. He wasn't breaking car windows. His poll numbers didn't collapse over it because he was being overly aggressive and un-American. Where are all the Tea Party people who had, the don't tread on me signs? Where are they today?
Okay, what this law will do, just so everyone understands, if invoked, it will allow the president to deploy the military. We're beyond National Guard here, so Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, into the streets to serve a policing function. Now, historically, we've tried to separate those two, right, for good reason. Posse comitatus is the Latin phrase, but it just means troops don't do policing. And so the question really is it necessary? Will it help? Is it necessary to send in the military? Will that help ICE do its job better? And look, I grew up with, not grew up, but, in my job professionally, knowing dozens of ICE agents, and they've all been very good, very solid people who want to do the right thing. I made major cases with ICE. I mean, ICE doesn't just do deportation. They make criminal cases as well. So in my experience with ICE, they're not Nazis, they're not racist. But do we need to bring in uniformed Army, Navy, Marines to get on the streets with them? I promise you, ICE would tell you, would say,
I want to make sure we get this phrase in, because the phrase is one homeland, one people, one heritage, remember who we are as American, over a picture of George Washington. And that is a hint at what a lot of people are suggesting is a hint at a Nazi German party thing that said one people, one realm, one leader. Do you remember what the largest Nazi rally ever held in America, where it was held?
Have you ever seen a dollar bill that says one nation under God? Have you ever read John Jay, who said we were one people with one language?
In Madison Square Garden in 1934. And you know what picture was on that stage? George Washington. And you know what the person said when they got on the stage to introduce that Nazi rally? Was that if George Washington was alive today, he and Adolf Hitler would be friends.
And a normal president would hold up that
before you run your mouth.
Let me just make one more note. You
won't
were
run my
talking,
mouth as
Chris
often
was
as I'd
talking
like.
about.
Well, when you call people white supremacists.
Thank you.
This really exposes the gap between enforcing the law and weaponizing it. Historically, immigration enforcement has worked best when it's boring, targeted, and procedural. During the Obama years, deportations were largely driven by court orders, audits, and prioritization of serious criminal offenses, not dramatic street operations. That distinction matters because evidence consistently shows militarized enforcement doesn't improve public safety. Studies from the Brennan Center and RAND have found that deploying military-style forces for civilian policing often escalates conflict and undermines cooperation, especially in immigrant communities where trust is already fragile. The Insurrection Act question is where alarms start ringing. The US has deliberately separated military power from civilian law enforcement for nearly 150 years under the posse comitatus principle, precisely because soldiers are trained to neutralize enemies, not protect civil liberties. When troops appear in neighborhoods, it signals occupation, not order. Even former Pentagon officials have warned that using active duty forces domestically risks long-term damage to democratic norms with little operational benefit. The extremist symbolism issue also isn't a fringe concern. Extremism researchers have documented how white nationalist groups frequently repurpose American founding imagery to cloak radical ideology and patriotism. That tactic is effective because it creates deniability while still signaling allegiance to insiders. Acknowledging that pattern isn't an attack on law enforcement, it's recognizing how propaganda works. Politically, this approach is backfiring. Polling from AP and Quinnipiac shows declining approval not because voters oppose borders, but because they reject cruelty and chaos. Most Americans support immigration enforcement alongside due process and restraint. When enforcement looks performative and punitive, public confidence collapses. Ellie Honig and Charles Blow are ultimately arguing for something conservative in the truest sense: stability, constitutional boundaries, and restraint. History shows that democracies weaken when force replaces legitimacy. Law enforcement succeeds when it's lawful, measured, and trusted, not when it borrows the tools and symbols of authoritarian power. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing, and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center, are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.